Today we're going to talk about how to graph quadratics in standard form. Standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. To be able to graph in standard form, it's really important that we know how to find the vertex. So first we're going to focus on just finding the vertex. And there's 3 steps for that. Find the axis of symmetry. X equals negative b over 2a. That is the formula that we use every time we find the axis of symmetry. Remember that the axis of symmetry is that imaginary line that goes right through the vertex. It's in the middle where it's symmetric on both sides. Then after we find that x value, we substitute the axis of symmetry or the x value back into the equation. We would plug that in for x here and here to find y, and then we write the vertex as an ordered pair. X, y. So our first example is y equals x squared minus 2x minus 1. Our a value is 1, there's imaginary 1 there. B value is negative 2, and our c value is negative 1. A is always in front of x squared, b is in front of x, and c is the constant. So finding the axis of symmetry, we have to put negative b is a negative 2, over 2 times a is 1. Since I have a negative and a negative, negative, negative turns into a positive. So I have 2 over 2 times 1, which is 2. 2 over 2 equals 1. So x equals 1. That is our axis of symmetry. Then to find the rest of the vertex, we have to plug in 1. It's already set up for us down here. It's changing x to 1. You can take this and put the whole thing in your calculator, or you can simplify using order of operations. It doesn't matter. Either way, we're going to get the same answer, y equals negative 2. And then we write that as an ordered pair. Our x value is 1, and our y value is negative 2. This is the vertex. It's really important to know the vertex to be able to graph the rest. Let's do one more example. This one we have a is a half, b is 4, c is 10. So negative b over 2a. So I have negative 4 over 2 times a half is 1. So that means x equals negative 4. After I find the axis of symmetry, I plug it in. This will not always be here set up for you. This is just to get us started. We are changing x to negative 4. That's why it's set up this way. Plug this whole thing into your calculator. Should get y equals 2. So the vertex is negative 4, 2. I'll let you guys try that last one. Okay, now we're going to look at how to graph in standard form. So notice the first couple steps are finding the same stuff we did before. That's important. Find the axis of symmetry, negative b over 2a. Find the vertex. That's what we've already done by plugging in the axis of symmetry, and then we graph our vertex. This is all new. After we have the vertex, that's only 1 point. 1 point is not enough to create a quadratic graph. So then we find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is always 0, c. We look at the c value, and that gives us the y-intercept. Then we plug in another x value, and this value will depend on what you have on your graph. And I'll show you what that looks like as we do an example. Then we reflect the points. After we have 3 points with a vertex, the y-intercept, and this other value, which gives us a point, then we can reflect those points over the axis of symmetry. And the last step would be identify the x-intercepts, or the zeros, or the roots. Remember all those words, solutions. We have y equals x squared minus 2x. Negative b over 2a would be negative negative 2. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to a plus over 2 times a, which is 1. So I get 2 over 2. axis of symmetry equals 1. One thing I like to do after I find the axis of symmetry is on my graph, draw in this dashed line for the axis of symmetry. This is where the middle of our graph should be. Okay, so I should have a U shape with half on this side, half on this side. It's going to be opening up because it's a positive. If it had a negative in front, then it would be opening down. After we find the axis of symmetry, we plug it in to find the vertex. So I'm plugging in 1 here and here. 1 squared minus 2 times 1 gives us negative 1. So I plugged in 1 and I got negative 1 for y. I can graph this. This is my vertex. 1, negative 1. Next, we look for the y-intercept. We look at the c value. I don't see a c value here. That means that it is 0. It would be like plus 0. So 0, 0 is our y-intercept. And then we have to plug in another x value. On this one, I tell you to plug in negative 1. Sometimes you'll have to choose which number to plug in, but I already have 2 points over here, so the next point that would make sense would be to pick negative 1 and see where that goes. Picking 1 over here, if I picked 2, I'm going to get the same thing as this because it is reflected. So I don't want to pick something on the other side. I want to just keep one side going. So I plug in negative 1. And when I simplify that, I get 3. So negative 1, 3, I can graph. This is half of my parabola. So I graphed those 3 points, and now I reflect. So this point reflects over the line here, and this point reflects over the line here. Now I can see my parabola. Let's do one more together without all of the guidance. We're just going to go through all those steps. First step is find the axis of symmetry. So negative b is 4, so negative 4 over 2a, negative 1. So I have negative 4 over negative 2, which equals 2. This is equal to x. So x equals 2 is my axis of symmetry. Then I can take this 2, plug it in for x, negative 2 squared plus 4 times 2 minus 3. I'm just replacing x with 2. Make sure this negative is on the outside of the parentheses. If it helps, put a 1 there. Plug this into your calculator. We get y equals 1. So my vertex is 2, 1. I should notice that this has a negative, so that means my parabola is going to be opening down. After we have the vertex, we need more points. Our next point, the easiest point, is to find the y-intercept, which is c. So my next point would be 0, negative 3. That's my y-intercept. Next step is to plug in another x value. So I have 2 points going this way. I could plug in negative 1, but I noticed that there's nothing here at 1, so 1 would be a little bit easier to plug in, and negative 1 might be off of my graph. So I'm going to choose 1, plug in, just like we did before. I'm going to put negative 1 on the outside so we don't forget about that. 1 squared plus 4 times 1 minus 3. Y equals 0. So this point would be 1, 0. Now that I have half of my graph, I can reflect and connect to make our parabola. One thing I forgot to do, I'm going to go back. Identify the x-intercepts. X-intercepts are where it touches the x-axis. Remember, there can be 2, there can be 1, or there can be none. This one has 2 at x equals 0 and x equals 2. And on this one, we also have 2, x equals 1, and x equals 3. Those are my solutions. So it's important to know the solutions are the x-intercepts.